A warm welcome to the session From KPIs to the Business Case Return on Investment on Green IT, so-called GROI. My name is Dominique Brack. In this session, I will take you with me exploring KPIs and the value to you based on a simple model, looking at the triple bottom line, the forward and reverse logistic process, and the specific measures you can take at the different levels. Additionally, we look into green procurement, e-waste disposal guidelines, the business case, green return on investment (GROI), success factors, and the blip around ethics. All the material used in this session will be made available for download. So if you don't pick up on something, don't worry about it. You will have access to it later. Green IT has a great potential to help society optimize resource use, save energy, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. To increase awareness on this potential, I have been involved as a contributing author writing a non-profit making, internationally collaborative book released under a Creative Commons license. The session is a small part around my chapter from the book. The complete book, including chapters from other contributing authors from around the globe, can be downloaded for free on the Green IT Awareness Week webpage. Links are included at the end of the presentation. One of the greatest challenges in integrating green into the business agenda and developing a green ICT strategy is how to connect boardroom policies on corporate social responsibility (CSR) and green IT on practical terms. A carefully created green IT strategy can help to reduce a company's negative impact on the environment while adding value to the overall business strategy. A thorough green IT strategy should consider an end-to-end view, incorporating the complete life cycle of assets. Demonstrating care and commitment to the environment eventually raises a company's public profile and reputation with stakeholders. The greening of IT operations can support the three crucial aspects of sustainability for an organization: economic, environmental, and social, the so-called triple bottom line. With the triple bottom line in mind, there is a real opportunity to think outside the box and execute true leadership and innovation in adapting principles outside the standard spheres of influence. Around KPIs, as sustainability, carbon and climate change initiatives become more widespread, CIOs are likely to be called upon to develop and report sustainability performance indicators, especially those with direct and material financial implications. These indicators are essential to meeting evolving disclosure requirements and effectively managing sustainability programs. Key performance indicators, KPIs, are the backbone of balanced scorecards, dashboards, and any other fancy technology you can imagine. While it may be tempting or even irresistible to create visual metaphors, more often than not, these are misused without an understanding of what actually constitutes a good KPI and delivers long-term value to the organization. My goal is to give you a solid platform for understanding and applying performance management principles based on KPIs. Rather than simply provide a list of possible KPIs, I would like to involve you in the process of creating and developing an understanding of them. In this way, you will then be able to assess whether certain KPIs are helpful or not. What are key performance indicators? A myriad of tools and methodologies, including sophisticated software, are available for measuring and applying performance management. The basic underlying principles or objectives of these systems are all the same: producing data in a meaningful way, thereby enabling management to make informed, fact-based decisions. Key performance indicators are related to goals or objectives. KPIs are used to assess current performance and provide a means for tracking performance against that goal or objective. Each KPI is based on a metric, making it a quantifiable measurement. Not every metric makes a good KPI. Good KPIs are based on the organization's critical success factors and aligned with corporate principles, in general, corporate social responsibility and corporate governance. They differ for each organization and industry. Specific green or sustainability KPIs can be similar for different organizations and industries. In example, reducing the carbon footprint of ICT technology or a green procurement policy might be alike, although they are weighted in different ways. Whichever KPIs are selected, they must reflect on the organization's goals and align with critical success factors. If the organization's goals and principles change, the KPIs must transform as well. At the same time, the definition of the KPI and how it is measured should not change often. Quantifiable and key to the organizational success. In performance management, one of the basic rules in defining goals is to apply the principle of setting specific, measurable, aligned, realistic, and timely, SMART goals. Take it another step and add two more considerations, and create even smarter goals. The addition of ethical and recorded to the model makes it even smarter. Do I need those? Once you have a set of KPIs, you can use them in different ways for forecasting or long-term analysis of specific developments, discovery of deviations, or as performance management tools. Applied correctly, KPIs can be used for setting organizational, departmental, or individual personal goals. KPIs give the organization or individual a clear picture of what is important and how it will be measured. A KPI of any value needs to be quantifiable. A generic goal like become more green is useless as a KPI without understanding the scope and applicability. What does it mean exactly? Should the staff wear green body paint, or should the company logo be green? Should bonsai trees be placed on every desk? Experience factor. Don't over KPI yourself. Execute a top-down approach. 3 to 5 KPIs for every objective and level, organizational, departmental, should suffice. Less is more. For a solid KPI development, consider the following process. Define KPIs based on the organization's corporate strategy and values. Check for smarter. Then test your KPIs based on the following questions. First, objective. What I am trying to achieve. Multiple KPIs per objective. Each objective will have different strategies on how to achieve it. Indicator. What I am going to measure. Baseline and definition of course of development action. Measures. How I am going to measure. Qualitative, quantitative data related to processes, inputs or outputs. Targets. What are the expected results? Minimum, maximum, or a stretch target, for instance. Results. What I have actually achieved. If you have tested successfully, then accept the KPI. You might want to undergo a peer review. That's it. Implement and have fun. If necessary, adjust. Remember, a fool with a tool is still a fool. KPI, metrics of applicability. The graphic depicts the product lifecycle and areas of possible KPI definition application. With the graphic, I want to introduce you to the concept of spheres of influence. Typically, your sphere of influence is based on your competency within your role in a given organization. A CIO's sphere of influence is higher around strategic ICT decisions, and a systems administrator's sphere of influence is focused on systems and technology. A company's influence is typically directed by the triple bottom line. The triple bottom line and the CSR principles encourage you to consider economic value, social impact, and environmental practices within your decisions. I deliberately widened the triple bottom line in the graphic. I wanted to incorporate the product lifecycle from an environmental practice perspective into the company's corporate governance. In practical terms, this indicates that it matters where things come from, what they are made of, how much energy has been used to produce them, how and where they are manufactured, their internal use, and how they disappear. In other words, how they are recycled and where the waste ends up. To me, this is exactly what green thinking is about. Is this relevant to KPI creation and applications? Yes, it is. You can set KPIs for your spheres of influence, or you can extend your sphere of influence because you think it is important or relevant. Think outside the box. Experience factor. In my experience, most companies are quite capable of defining and managing KPIs within the operational areas. Now, as we start to cultivate a more environmentally friendly attitude, companies are looking into what can be done differently or in addition to what they are already doing. Every activity that a business performs has an impact on a social, economic, and environmental level. These impacts are often not obvious or immediate. They may be merely hidden or indirect and only appear when you take a more holistic view. From an environmental perspective, the whole life cycle of a certain product or service is relevant. The life cycle looks at the total interrelationship from raw materials to manufacture, to the product throughout its use, and from disposal through recycling to create new raw material. Products have different environmental impacts at different stages of the life cycle. Aluminium, for instance, has a negative environmental impact when the raw materials is extracted, but it is relatively benign when used or recycled. On the other hand, a printer will have its main impact during its utilization because of the consumption of consumables, paper in this instance. In the realm of information technology, it is important to assess the impacts of the products in use. From a risk and financial perspective, it is becoming relevant to consider the entire life cycle of the products you utilize. As legislation changes and mandates the recycling of specific products in a controlled fashion, there is already a financial impact when you want to recycle CRT monitors, for instance. Usually, you have to pay more to dispose of these products. This means that if your products get recycled incorrectly and end up dumped in third world countries, the company may find itself in a reputational and financial disaster. Experience factor. Most organizations rely solely on the recycling label provided by the manufacturer. As with all things, an organization needs to be diligent in its handling and try to see past the label. Closing one's eyes or referring to the business partner as the one at fault does not work in the long term. By putting provisions in RFQs or RFTs and recycling disposal contracts or tender documentation, you can be assured that the legal side is covered, if not the moral one. When defining objectives and subsequently KPIs in the extended spheres of influence, with the intention of making an allowance for the full product life cycle, you will discover that the areas are filled with labels of all kinds, either for energy consumption or not consumption, materials used, toxicity, recycling, etc. The crux with these labels is that you don't know whether they are credible or not. This area is also the battlefield of greenwashing, the means of presenting a product in a specific light or focus with attributes it doesn't really possess. More about greenwashing later. Green procurement. With combined purchasing power, it is possible to influence both the price and the availability of goods and services in the marketplace. Organizations are in a position to influence the demand for environmentally preferable goods and services, as well as the ability of industry to respond to the escalating use of environmental standards in international markets. By integrating into procurement the application of environmental performance considerations, organizations can achieve better and more environmentally friendly solutions or products. It is seen as best practices reducing the environmental impacts of operations and promoting environmental stewardship. To integrate performance considerations into the procurement process. The table lists the procurement success factors identified as being important in the extended context of corporate social responsibility. Success factors are strongly related to the mission and strategic goals of your business or project. The content of the table lists guiding principles for the development of your green procurement policy. Green procurement. To ensure all considerations are taken into account, all equipment must be procured through a central procurement unit. Before the procurement policy will be enforced, all the procedures from an information and communication technology (ICT) perspective must be followed. The graphic details the relationship between the procurement policy and the ICT Chief Information Officer (CIO's) responsibility. As ICT is the main contributor to carbon emission, it makes good business sense to reduce these emissions through a proactive approach. Products that consume less energy or that are right-sized to the purpose will save substantial costs within the life cycle. Electricity, consumption, consumables such as paper or toner, and avoid costly disposal and recycling consequences later on. Electronics companies respond to consumer demand over and above all other factors. Most of them do not believe that consumers really care whether or not their products are green. This is particularly so if it means they will cost more. Allowing consumers to distinguish between green products and those that are not on the basis of a sound procurement policy will change behavior and improve the market with better and more environmentally friendly products. Noteworthy. In the realm of data centers, it is a generally known fact that the operational expenditures related to the use of a server, OpEx, have surpassed the capital expenditures, CapEx, of the acquired hardware. This makes it even more important to incorporate a holistic view on the life cycle of ICT equipment and take operational aspects into consideration as well. When you reach out for environmentally friendly or green products, you will discover a multitude of labels and products. The section on greenwashing delivers insight on how to unveil products for which the label promises more than the product itself. Take these concerns into the procurement lifecycle vendor evaluation part. Most electronics manufacturers like to talk about their green products. But as a matter of fact, electronics are still made with a lengthy list of toxic materials, which are problematic, both in production and when it comes time to recycle or dispose of these products. Greenwashing. Occasionally, a word or expression becomes so overused that it loses any real meaning and people become cynical or sarcastic about its usage. There is an argument that this is exactly what has happened to the word green in the business world, as it is likely to be affixed to just about any business term imaginable. Green this and green that. My observation is that people are starting to suffer from a sort of green fatigue. I personally consider greenwashing to be a part of this problem. Historically, greenwashing is a term derived from whitewashing. Most everyone is familiar with the expression whitewashing, which is defined as a coordinated attempt to hide unpleasant facts, especially in a political context. Greenwashing is based on the same premise, but in an environmental context. Some say it is whitewashing, but with a green brush. When a company or organization spends more time and money claiming to be green through advertising and marketing than it does actually implementing green business practices, that's greenwashing. There are many definitions and opinions of what constitutes greenwashing. The definition I like most is the one from CorpWatch. Green e-waste disposal guidelines. Continuing advances in technology mean that electronic products are becoming outdated more rapidly. This, coupled with life cycle strategies for ICT components, means that more products are being thrown away, even if they still work. The life cycle is the period of time during which information technology hardware and software remains useful. The refresh rate is the planned rate of replacement for information technology hardware and software. Within the life cycle, you may reassign certain hardware. For instance, you can define shorter cycles for the primary use of the ICT components and then reuse the components in a secondary cycle. This extends the total time of use for the ICT components. When you define life cycles, make sure you are covered by an appropriate on-site warranty and associated support levels. In the case of critical equipment, it may also be effective to retain on-site spares that can be used as replacements on short notice and returned to the manufacturer for repair. The time frames in the warranties normally reflects the manufacturers normal and extended warranty periods for ICT equipment. The table represents a typical life cycle that many organizations have in place. The concept of having two distinct life cycles for ICT equipment extends the hardware's use and assigns it in a secondary deployment to less critical roles in order to achieve full ROI, return on investment, and minimize expenditures on new hardware. Secondary deployment or reassigning can occur for a maximum period of 2 years. Well-defined life cycles and disposal guidelines for ICT equipment ensure that you are delivering satisfactory performance to the business and acting diligently to manage the organization's assets in the most efficient and effective way possible. Green e-waste disposal guidelines. There are a number of considerations one confronts when moving or dispose of computer hardware. Some, if not all, ICT equipment may have sensitive data on the hard disk. To ensure that these considerations are taken into account, all equipment must be scrapped through the ICT Services Department CIO's responsibility. Before the disposal, guidelines are applied. All the procedures from an ICT perspective must be followed. Only when the ICT equipment has been signed off by ICT, CIO for instance, can it be moved into the reverse logistics process of disposal and recycling. The graphic explains the relationship of the disposal guidelines and the ICT's or CIO's responsibility. ICT equipment contains hazardous materials such as lead, mercury, bromine, and cadmium. The substances that cause the most concern are the heavy metals like lead, mercury, cadmium, and chromium-6, halogenated substances, in general CFCs, polychlorinated biphenyls, and plastics. Circuit boards, for instance, contain brominated flame retardants, BFRs. During incineration, BFRs can give off dioxins and furans. Other materials and substances that can be present are arsenic, asbestos, nickel, and copper. These substances may act as a catalyst to increase the formation of dioxins during incineration. It's the organization's responsibility to consult with ICT to select and approve external agents for the disposal of redundant equipment according to socially acceptable environmental guidelines. What are the steps to be taken? Establish and define standards, procedures, and restrictions for the disposal of non-leased ICT equipment in a legal, environmentally friendly, and cost-effective manner. The disposal of computer hardware must be recorded in the asset register, so the whereabouts of ICT equipment is under control. Selecting a viable recycling or disposal partner. Selecting a viable recycling or disposal partner is one of the most important steps you can take in making sure that e-waste is handled acceptably and in a socially responsible manner. Different government bodies have published regulatory frameworks for handling e-waste. Similarly, various trade and industry bodies are also working to develop the best practices to deal with ICT e-waste. It's important to scan the evolving code of practice and keep updating, at least once a year, the e-waste guidelines to maintain the best practices for disposal of ICT e-waste. Electronics recycling is an industry plagued with despicable practices, including dumping toxic e-waste in developing nations. It's very hard for customers to know whether a recycler is using such practices or to tell whether a recycler is ethical or not. Guyu is often called the e-waste recycling capital of China. Much e-waste is exported to China, is sent to Guyu, which is known as the most polluted town in the world. Recently, Accra, Ghana, Africa, has also become an e-waste dump. Workers engage in highly dangerous practices, including soaking appliances in acid baths to extract valuable materials, conducted under alarmingly inadequate protective procedures. Ban. Basel Action Network is the world's only organization focused on confronting the global environmental injustice and economic inefficiency of toxic trade, toxic wastes, products and technology, and its devastating impacts. It is clear that the answer to our e-waste crisis lies not in finding new downstream hiding places. Nowadays, it is cheaper and more convenient to buy a new machine to accommodate the latest software and hardware technology, and their increasing demands for more speed, memory, and power than it is to upgrade the old. This rapid trash and buy mentality comes with a monumental price that we as humans are just beginning to pay. Green IT business case. In the world of green IT or sustainable IT, there is a lot of blood in your scuttlebutt. Labels and marketing phrases hammer the world in a never-ending fashion. Seeing behind this lack of information, or rather misinformation flow, is crucial. There is no such thing as zero CO2 emissions or the complete absence of a footprint, specifically not in combination with electrical components and information and communication technology infrastructure. Most of this publicizing refers to the practice of offsetting, which has a limited view on the broader scope of environmental issues. The table outlines strategies for promoting environmental friendliness and sustainability in preferential order. Less is the most preferred, followed by efficiency initiatives, and the least preferred is actually offsetting. Creating less is by far the most sustainable approach. Emissions and products not created will minimize impact from a full life cycle point of view. A product not created does not need to be recycled or disposed at the end of its life cycle. This is contrary to the general direction of common business, where more is actually better, and defines the economic success of an organization. Mature organizations are typically capable of realizing projects in this area because tangible ROI or direct financial benefits are often hard to see. The benefits achieved are less tangible, in general, reputation, CSR, competitive advantages, board commitment, and customer demand. Efficiency category. Efficiency is where organizations can test their ground. Typically, a tangible ROI can be achieved and the benefits are more specific. In general, cost savings, top-line growth, shareholder demand, and access to capital. It is recognized that IT consumes significant amounts of energy. Specifically, data centers account for a large part of an organization's expenditures and energy consumption. For instance, for air conditioning, the technology currently used by a large number of data centers is based on room cooling. This is like cooling the whole kitchen in order to have a cool banana on your kitchen top. There is lot of efficiency potential. Cooling needs to target the component requiring cooling, and in the end, this is the processor and power supply. In the kitchen example, you would put the banana into the fridge. The next step would be to cool the banana directly with liquid pipes. It is analogous for the data center. First you have room cooling, then you have row-based cooling, rack-based cooling, server-based cooling, and processor liquid pipe cooling are the most efficient ways of applying cooling technology in the data center. Offsetting is a service. The buyer pays another organization to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions in the buyer's place. Buying a carbon offset means investing in a project that reduces greenhouse gas emissions. The underlying idea of carbon offsetting is that greenhouse gases are distributed globally, and the impact of their emissions on a global warming is therefore independent of the source. Some rather absurd practices have sprung from the companies creating these credits. For instance, with tree plantations in developing countries. Some of the problems are monocultures of trees, reducing biodiversity and environmental stability, or the planting of non-native trees, resulting in green deserts. Offsetting is a valid instrument for inducing behavioral change, since organizations react mostly on pecuniary stimuli. From an environmental perspective, this is the least preferred choice. Eventually, CO2 emissions may become a tangible company asset, like desks and computers. Green IT business case. The real challenge in defining a business case lies in justifying the investment. You have to win the support of the people who have the authority to give your project a thumbs up, executive management. Building a compelling business case behind the proposed technology investment is essential. Structuring a strong business case may be time-consuming and sometimes tedious, but it is a necessary step that prevents misalignments and frustration down the road. How do you build a compelling business case for a new investment? The principal objective should be to clearly define the business benefits and goals associated with the case. Most projects already fail with this. They fall short based on a misaligned and unfinished business case, neglecting to provide a comprehensive analysis of costs and benefits as measured against the goal. While the overall objective of building the business case is to justify the investment, it also serves the important purpose of setting a corporate tone for the project and getting all parties on the same page and working towards a mutual goal. A strong business case for an investment puts the investment decision into a relevant and specific strategic context. On the basis of the business case, senior management needs to be able to comfortably make an informed decision. Without this tactic, it is unlikely that executive management will agree to invest in the project. The success of the business case will depend on the degree to which every stakeholder is involved and aligned with the overall vision and business objectives laid out by management. With a sound business case in place and by considering the principles discussed, the myth that environmental responsibility diminishes profitability can be eliminated. Green return on investment (GROI). Green return on investment (GROI) is probably the most common term tossed around in any ICT or business organization today. Chief Information Officers (CIOs) can add value to their business by projecting potential GROI for new investments. GROI refers to the relative benefits of an action and is normally calculated by dividing the return from an action by the cost of that action. GROI analysis involves the evaluation of the investment potential of a project by comparing the expected gains with the costs. In the last few years, a more holistic view on GROI with the inclusion of metrics relating to corporate social responsibility (CSR), triple bottom line, has been favored. There are various options in the ways in which GROI should be measured and consequently different conclusions regarding projects' actual returns on investment. Faced with shrinking budgets and the increasing role of information technology as both a source of energy consumption and a potential asset in the quest for sustainability, IT organizations are confronted with a dilemma. Ignore potential green initiatives until the financial crisis eases, or incorporate a more holistic view in terms of adding environmental friendliness and social responsibility to the decision circle. Even when the budget is limited, the incorporation of these efforts into a strong business plan that demonstrates a return on investment might result in a winning argument. Regardless of where a business stands in its sustainability efforts, whether it is creating a baseline inventory or engaging in long-range programs, central and distributed information communication technology must have a seat at the planning table. As a consumer of energy and producer of greenhouse gases, ICT plays a critical role in the move towards green IT. CIOs must work alongside chief executive officers to show that green IT can be truly green through the implementation of cost savings and GROI initiatives. These leaders can contribute to an infrastructure and organizational landscape that is both financially healthy and environmentally conscious. In addition to web conferencing and purchasing more energy-efficient products, ICT offers other ways to help organizations burn less fossil fuel, such as telecommuting, which reduces employee-driven driving time and therefore cuts down on pollution. Green technology investments positively affect companies' bottom lines. The very purpose of such projects is to reduce energy consumption and other costly waste within an organization, resulting in such benefits as a smaller carbon footprint and more efficient energy use. Competition and changing market conditions, combined with the rapid pace at which technology business environments, trends, and IT industry preferences change, pose a significant risk to the realization of future benefits. To minimize exposure to unexpected changes, it is highly desirable to recover the original investment as quickly as possible. Non-financial or indirect benefits are hard to calculate and are vulnerable to errors and variances. If non-financial or indirect benefits constitute a high percentage of the overall benefits, the potential for variance is high and vice versa. Green return on investment ROI. Not all green initiatives are alike, and many projects require the divide and conquer approach. While an IT department can undertake some initiatives on its own, many projects require full organizational support and close collaboration with other areas of the business. It is advisable to determine which departments and individuals within a business execute which projects best. The division of projects is based on percentages of expected financial and non-financial benefit. If the percentage of financial benefits is high and a clear ROI can be defined, the project bears minimal risk and can be executed by the IT department or an individual within the organization. Projects with a high percentage of non-financial benefits typically involve the greater organization and carry higher risks. Key success factors. The challenge for executives is to consider the economic, social, and environmental implications to achieve a balanced outcome for their organization. Green IT is not about public relations or racking up brownie points with a few quick and easy initiatives. It scores heavily on the corporate social responsibility front. It needs to be an integral part of any corporation's climate sustainability agenda. Green IT, or maybe more accurately, sustainable IT, can translate into substantial business opportunities and cost savings. Sustainable IT has emerged as a key factor affecting businesses today. The executives are under pressure to lead the adoption of sustainable business practices and need to understand what sustainable means for their business and what needs to be done about it. Sustainable IT is about utilizing your IT in an environmentally friendly manner. That's not just about using less paper, introducing equipment sleep modes, and virtualizing. It's also about handling e-waste responsibly and being diligent when purchasing. The whole product life cycle needs to be in the focus. Not only hardware, but also software can have sustainable characteristics. Poorly written software might call for more energy and processing time than is strictly required. Green software must be written with the objective of decreasing the processing time needed for a specific task, reducing the associated energy cost. The hardware aspect is far more straightforward. Several schemes are available for rating computers based on their energy efficiency and toxicity. IT spending tends to be a business's second largest outlay after capital expenditure. It is difficult to imagine businesses not engaging suitably and simply fiddling with sustainable IT in a limited fashion around the fringes of their organization. Regulatory requirements and compliance considerations based on the introduction of governmental CO2 schemes will bring the topic of sustainability quickly back to the corporate agenda, although from a risk-based perspective initially. A well-placed subsidies or pieces of legislation may hurry things along. With rising energy costs and a strong global focus on climate change, Businesses should consider actions to improve their corporate social standing. These cost pressures will drive energy-saving initiatives, reduce energy waste, reduce consumption, and help preserve the environment with the additional benefit of a reduction in environmental impact. Management should be aware of alternatives and decide whether to embrace leading-edge technologies, potentially generating cost efficiencies and competitive advantages for their business and clients. Simply waiting for sustainable IT to become a business as usual or mainstream activity is not executing leadership. There is an opportunity for business and IT leaders to collaborate to deliver on sustainability objectives. Dominique's quick ethics check. Ask yourself the 3 experience factor. While working on large international assignments involving different stakeholders and cultures, I have often been asked, how do I make the right decisions? Do I decide in favor of socio-economic means or the short-term view of KPIs relevant to promotion and career advancement? This depends on your personal and professional work ethic. The topic of what ethics means is monumental. Often you are forced to make quick and rational decisions in an area you're just start to learning about. Personally, I then call for the 3. This means I reflect on 3 questions I ask myself. This is in no way scientific, but it extends the frame of reference and helps to consider more than one point of view. Closing. During my professional life, I have seen a lot, the good and excellent, and the bad and ugly. Exceptional leaders and organizations have one thing in common. Individuals make the difference. Green IT and other environmental considerations are topics requiring true leadership and vision. Set a new standard. Be bold and innovative. Become the new sustainability ambassador of your organization. I hope with my session I could provoke thought and inspire you to take your first steps into a more environmental friendly way of doing business. Thanks very much.